Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have a very important update for you in the 2026 California governor's race, where we can officially project that things have been resolved. We now know who will be the two candidates for governor, and if you missed my video from yesterday, we also now know who the leading candidates for Los Angeles mayor are going to be in the general election as well. So I know this has been going on the last few days or so. I've made, I think, like 4 videos now or 5 videos about these two races in California. Now, obviously, today being Tuesday, we have another election night happening tonight in Maine and South Carolina, in Nevada as well, I do believe. But we finally got some results and clarity on the California race, so I'm going to break that all down for you in the video today. So first, we'll start with the California race. Obviously, this video, again, is coming out at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. I'm recording this as of the news is breaking about 9:45 p.m. on Monday night, and this is officially what we know. We know that Xavier Becerra, the leading Democrat candidate, a few days ago was declared one of the 2 winners of this race. He's going to the general election. Today, just about 10 minutes ago, we got the news that Republican Steve Hilton, who was endorsed by President Trump, has officially been declared the second winner in this race, defeating Democrat Tom Steyer, who is making a very competitive push for 3rd place in this race. This came after a lot of votes came in today out of California, now at about 84% of the vote in. So another 10% of the vote, I do believe, came in out of California from, I think it was yesterday to today, or from Sunday to Tuesday. Another 10% of the vote came in. Ultimately, where things stand, Becerra's up at around nearly a little bit shy of 2.2 million votes. Steve Hilton's also shy of about 2 million votes, at 1,975,062. Tom Steyer's currently at about 1,759,328 votes, 22.36%. Now, this is very important because Tom Steyer over the last few days has actually cut Steve Hilton's lead by a very significant amount. 25.1% of the vote for Hilton, 22.36% for Steyer. Right now, there's a lead across the state of California for Hilton over Steyer of roughly, you're looking at about 220,000 votes currently separating Steyer, Hilton, give or take a few thousand. So about 220,000 votes. A few days ago, Hilton was leading over Steyer by about 400,000 votes. And I think it was yesterday, in yesterday's video that I did, Hilton was only ahead of Steyer by about 300,000 votes. So a very significant amount of vote came in for Tom Steyer, and it got roughly about a 220,000 vote gap or so between Hilton or Steyer. Still, this race was called by Decision Desk HQ in favor of Steve Hilton over Tom Steyer, and you may be wondering, well, why is that? If there's been a very significant movement, there's about a 3-point difference between Hilton and Steyer, and still 16% of the vote to go, of the roughly about 7,870,000 or so hundred votes. If there's still another million votes to go, why was this race called? The simple fact is, Tom Steyer's had some votes that came in today that he did very well in, but there was also a lot of votes that came in that he did not do well enough to continue to have that pathway to potentially catching Steve Hilton. And let me just show you some of this. If you've seen my prior videos, you would know I've been using Vote Hub. They've been updating a lot of these ballot drops out of California. They've been very, very good and very useful here. And we see a vote drop, for instance, out of San Diego County, came in about 8:23 p.m. Here, Tom Steyer gained about 7.9%. Steve Hilton goes down about 7.1%. So you're looking at about a 15% gain for Steyer over Hilton in San Diego. And that actually is very good for Tom Steyer. The problem is, though, Steyer's not been doing that well across the state in all these vote dumps, and that's what he needed. The benchmark that I've seen from, I believe it was Vote Hub, and I want to give proper credit, I believe it was the head of data science, Zachary Donini, a few days ago, said he saw initially that Steyer had to win all these vote dumps in between 15%. Within a few days, that number became 17% because Steyer was outperforming in a lot of areas across California that would typically be considered more either Republican or more swing, like 50-50. But ultimately, Steyer up by about 15 points in San Diego, good number, but Orange County, for instance, Steve Hilton goes down about 9.5. Tom Steyer goes up about 7.1. Again, you're looking here at about 16.4% swing towards Steyer. That is very good. That's something Steyer needed to see for those numbers to keep continuing. Shasta County, though, smaller in overall numbers, but this was a very bad result for Steyer. Hilton goes down by about 0.9%. Steyer goes up 1.9. nowhere near enough. Los Angeles did have some very good results for Steyer over Hilton, 9.6% gain for Steyer. Hilton goes down about 8.8%. You're looking here about a 18.4% shift here. Again, great news for Tom Steyer. That's why you see Steyer cut the lead from about 300,000 votes down to about 220,000 in the state of California today. But those areas that are very high populous, they did very well for Steyer. That was great. The bad news for Steyer, smaller areas didn't do as well. Marin County. This is about a 13-point gain for Steyer in Marin County. Again, good. Still a few points down to that threshold that he needed. Santa Cruz County. This, you're looking roughly about a 13.3% shift for Steyer. Again, good for Steyer. Not enough percentage-wise what he needs. And Zachary Danini even says of this around 7:18 p.m. that at this point, Steyer's path back is extremely narrow and approaching being non-existent. He would need the remaining vote to break dramatically differently than what we've seen in the past 6 out of the 2 votes so far. San Joaquin County from June 8th. Hilton goes down 0.3, Becerra only up 1.8. That's well shy of that 15% threshold that he needs. El Dorado County, an overall net gain for Steyer of about 4.1. Again, smaller area, not as many votes, but in an area Hilton's doing well here. Steyer did not get enough of those numbers there than he needed. Lake County, I'm looking at a gain of about 5.1% for Steyer. Again, good Steyer got more votes, but Republican votes seem to hang on more for Steve Hilton, not enough for Steyer to match. San Francisco, again, San Francisco is going to be very important here. San Francisco on election night was one of the only counties in the state, I think one of like 3 or 4, that Tom Steyer was winning. And Steyer had a decent day here. He gained 11.1%. Hilton lost 4.6%. Adding those up, you're looking at about 15.7%. But he was already winning San Francisco very heavily. And again, that threshold was in between 15 to 17%. But as Steyer was doing poorly in some of these other counties, to have a chance to stay in this race, the areas he's doing very well, like San Francisco, like Los Angeles, like the Bay Area, he probably needed to exceed 17% to really make up for the deficits in those areas. So going up about 15.7% in San Francisco is certainly good for Steyer, but it's not good enough when you account for the other places where he's not doing as well. He likely needed this above 17 points to stay in the race at this point. San Bernardino County as well. Steyer goes up 3.2. Hilton goes down 4.7. You're looking at, what's that? That's about 7.9% shift, well short of that 15% number. Alameda County, final one we're going to mention here, very similar. Steyer goes up 10.9. Hilton goes down about 6.2. So this one is about a 17.1% shift. So Alameda County, just by the bare really minimum, breaks that 17% threshold. That was very well for Tom Steyer. So I can't stress this enough. Tom Steyer overall had a very good day in terms of the votes that came in. But given the lead that Steve Hilton already had, and given that Hilton, honestly, in a lot of these vote dumps, outperformed in these smaller counties that were going for strong for Hilton already, Steyer needed to get massive improvements in those areas, and he just didn't do that. So Hilton holds the ground there. Steyer does well in the more liberal areas, doing well, but not nearly well enough. Even here on 7:18 p.m., they updated from Ellis Bates, saying that Steyer is performing well in the Bay Area, having narrowly flipped both Alameda County and Santa Cruz from Xavier Becerra. However, his gains elsewhere have not been strong enough to meaningfully improve his single-digit odds of advancing. And that essentially, if you were to sum up the last 4 days of election results, why has Steve Hilton won and not Tom Steyer? I think that's a very great way of summing it up. We've seen over the last few days Tom Steyer's improving his margins. He's been inching closer and closer to Steve Hilton. There's still 16% of the vote to go, so it wouldn't shock me if it becomes 25 to 23 or even 25 to 23 and a half if it becomes very close. But once all the votes are in, and this is why Decision Desk HQ made the call, is they know there's not going to be enough votes, not for Steyer to get closer, because it will get closer. There won't be enough votes for Steyer to actually take the lead from Steve Hilton at the current rate of these vote dumps have come in. Because the vote dumps are coming in well enough for Steyer to close the gap, but not well enough for Steyer to ultimately take the lead from Steve Hilton. And based on how the votes came in today, you're probably looking at Steyer needing to have a 19 to even 20% vote dump advantage for him from Hilton to make up for the deficits he had in a lot of those counties. In terms, we can look on the map here. Some areas I mentioned where Steyer did do well. He did do better in LA, now at 25.64%. He even did better in Orange County at 17.2%, but again, trailing where he needs to be. San Diego County, Steyer did well here, went up from about that 16-point number now to 21.06. Again, very strong here. Likely needs more of those votes to make up for the margins, though, there. We can look in the Bay Area, because this is a place where Steyer did do well, and I do want to give Steyer the attention in this area as well here. That should be good. San Francisco overall goes for Steyer 38.4 over Becerra. In Marin County, Steyer's had here still 44% in, so a lot of vote to go here. Narrowly ahead of Becerra there. Contra Costa stays 31.89 to 24.89 for Becerra over Steyer, but Alameda does flip for Steyer, 33.52 and 32.21 for Becerra. San Mateo, Steyer's still down about 5 points there. Santa Cruz, nearly ahead of Becerra by about 0.4%. Santa Clara, Becerra over Steyer, about 6 points. So, across the state, again, I've been reiterating it, it's a very competitive race. It's a very close race between Becerra, Hilton, and Steyer. I do want to show this is the district map, this is the precinct map for California in 2024. Kamala Harris got about 58.5% of the vote. Donald Trump got about 38.34%. And I want to show you this because it's important. Steve Hilton, who was the Trump-endorsed Republican, got about 25.1% of the vote. Combining that with Chad Bianco's 10.25%, that's roughly about 35, and then say about 35.35% of the overall vote here, which is about 3% shy of Donald Trump's 38.34%. But you have to remember there are a lot of Republican candidates down ballot as well that were getting about 0.2% of the vote or so. So if you were to add these votes, you probably saw Republican turnout relatively similar to what the precinct map in 2024 was, of the Republicans getting about 38% of the vote. And you go throughout the state of California, you see Los Angeles voting for Trump about 31.9% of the vote. San Diego voting for Trump about 40%, but also in Central California. We can see here in Riverside County, Trump got 49.3%. San Bernardino, Trump got about 49.7%. You can look at these central counties like Fresno, Madera, Mariposa, even San Joaquin, Calaveras. These areas throughout the state of California that are smaller in overall population, but in close races, these votes do count up. Now, California, the general election level is not typically competitive for Republicans, but in a governor's race like this one, those smaller amounts of votes do really matter, because Hilton getting 25.1% of the vote is enough to be in second place. He trails Xavier Becerra by just a bit under 200,000 votes here. Literally almost exactly 200,000, 202,000 vote difference between Becerra and Hilton leads Steyer by only about 200,000 votes as well. So those small areas throughout the state, like Tulare County, Kings County, Fresno, not necessarily that they're small, but smaller compared to Los Angeles, the combined Bay Area, and San Diego. But when you see Hilton getting a lot of the Republican vote in these areas, not as well as Trump did in the general election, obviously, but consolidating like 70 to 80% of Trump's vote for him in a lot of these areas here, and Steyer just not hitting those percentages well enough to jump into that category, it's a big reason why Hilton was able to hold on and win here. And ultimately, I think it's fair to say here, now looking back in the race, when Trump endorsed Steve Hilton, it took a lot of the wind away from Chad Bianco's sails. But you see Xavier Becerra getting 27.67%, Tom Steyer getting 22.36%. There's a real potential possibility here that both Hilton and Bianco may have been locked out of the general election had Trump not endorsed in this race. If Becerra and Steyer both get 22.36 without Trump's endorsement, Hilton may very well be around 19%. Bianco may be up like 15%. There's a good chance Becerra and Steyer's the general election matchup. So from that calculus, President Trump may have actually done I don't know what's the right word. I don't know if done a service is the right word, but may have almost helped Steve Hilton more getting the Republican nomination or getting into the top two, because that may not have happened if Trump hadn't endorsed him. Now, what does it mean for the general election? Well, this is the bad news for the Republicans, is I think the competitiveness kind of ends here. California is typically a very safe state. Kamala Harris won it by 20 points in 2024. It went for Biden by 29.2 in 2020. The governor's race in 2022, Newsom won it by 18.4%. And then in 2018, it went for Newsom by about 24%. It has not fallen under 15 points in California in a very long time. And I don't think this election is going to be any different. I think Xavier Becerra will defeat Steve Hilton by more than 15 points, so I'd still have California as safe Democrat. But still, you could say Steve Hilton, as the Republican advancing to the general election, could be considered I would say either a win or like a minor win for the Republicans, because Steve Hilton's not going to win this governor's race. You can say it very definitively. But him being at the top of the ticket may at least help drive some Republican turnout. Because something that goes very under the radar in a lot of races is the down ballot races in California. This is the old map. The map has been redrawn to be more Democratic friendly. But there's going to be some close districts in California that Republicans that are running may now have a better chance with Steve Hilton at the top of the ticket. If there was two Democrats in Becerra versus Steyer, maybe some Republicans say, you know what, I know no matter which candidate wins the general, I'm not going to like them, so I'm just going to stay home and not vote. Now a lot of Republicans may turn out and vote, and it may help the Republicans down ballot. Big if, but that is something important to at least keep an eye out for. So that's where things stand on the governor's race. Becerra and Hilton is officially the general election candidates. Now also the Los Angeles mayor's race. In the video from yesterday, we did cover this, but if you did not see it, Karen Bass, we knew she was going to be one of the top two vote getters. She advanced a few days ago, but Nithya Raman officially passed Spencer Pratt yesterday, leading about 196 to 193,000 votes. So approximately a 3,000 vote lead for Raman over Pratt, and the race was quickly called once that happened, given the amount of vote that was left out there still to count, which I think was roughly about like 15% of the vote or so. And in today's video on these results, most of the vote came in. Now over 95% of the vote in out of Los Angeles of the 804,180 votes cast. It's possible we're still waiting, maybe on like a few hundred to a few thousand votes left to come in, but most of the vote is considered in on Los Angeles. Nithya Raman officially passes Spencer Pratt, getting 28.55% of the vote. Pratt gets 25.83%. Overall, Raman leads over Spencer Pratt by about 22,000 votes. 229,576, 207,757. And that's the talk of the race, is what happened was, obviously on election night, Spencer Pratt was leading. He was leading by a pretty good amount, roughly about 9% at 30 to 21%. As the vote by mail dumps came in by each day, the vote by mail was heavily younger voters and heavily more Democratic voters, and that is a demographic, a group that Nithya Raman did a lot better in than both even Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt. Nithya Raman, I do believe, across all the vote by mails that came in, Raman actually defeated Karen Bass in those numbers, and that's why you saw Raman go from about 21% on election night, where she was essentially nearly conceding the race, saying that's very unlikely that she would come back and win, given she was down by 9 points. And then these vote by mails came in very strongly for her, enough for her to pass Spencer Pratt, now leading in this race by about 3% and a 22,000 vote lead. So it was definitely a big come from behind win for Nithya Raman in this race. And again, the polling on this race heading into it showed Pratt at 18.4%, 15.9% for Nithya Raman, Karen Bass at 26.4%. So there was still a lot of undecided vote up for grabs in this race between Pratt and Raman and Bass to win. Bass ends up going up about from that 26 to 34%, which goes up about 8 points. Raman, from that 15-point number, goes up about 13 points to 28, and Pratt goes up about 7 points from 18% up to about 25.83. So in terms of a distribution of the overall vote, a lot of that undecided vote almost went kind of exactly what the polls were saying, where about 8% more for Bass, about 7% more for Raman, and about 7% more for Pratt. It ends up being very similar in terms of where it ended. The only thing being, though, Spencer Pratt was the candidate that was in I was wrong on that. Nithya Raman got 13% more. So for Bass and Pratt, it was a pretty even distribution of the undecided votes. But Nithya Raman really capitalized on that, getting 13%, going up to 28.5%, and now advancing to the general election. So it was very big for Nithya Raman, obviously, to advance. Spencer Pratt, despite running a campaign that got a lot of attention in Los Angeles and in national media as well, will be in third place and will avoid the runoff. Again, from a general election standpoint, going back to that LA map, it's not really too surprising. And like Los Angeles County as a whole is a 2-to-1 Democratic county. The city of Los Angeles, it counts, is even arguably more Democratic than that. It's probably like 70-30, 75-25 Democrat to Republican. So Spencer Pratt pretty much got the exact margins here that Donald Trump got in 2024. But again, you're running in a very heavily Democratic area against Karen Bass and Nithya Raman, two Democratic candidates. And we saw how the race went. Pratt ended up finishing in third place. Bass and Raman advanced to the general. Now, for the governor's race, I said, well, it's Democrat versus Republican. Democrats going to win here by a safe amount. No real surprises. General election for Los Angeles mayor is going to be a lot more competitive. It was about a 9-point win for Bass over Rich Caruso in 2022. This time around, though, it's going to be very close as well. Karen Bass currently, based on the most updated odds, we can see in the last week or so how they have changed here. Again, on election night, 10 p.m., Bass is at 66.5% to win. Pratt was at 21, Raman's at 11.5. Come to today, Bass is at 56% to win. Nithya Raman's at 43% to win. This race is going to be very tight. In terms of the election markets, that's on Polymarket. Kalshi's 58 to 41 in favor of Bass. But in terms of election markets, I think it's anything 60% or under is considered a toss-up. Anything, I think it's 60 to 80% is considered lean. And then 80 above, I want to say, is likely or something like that. Again, it could be incorrect on these margins, but this is essentially a toss-up race between Karen Bass and Nithya Raman based on the market odds alone. So it's going to be a very interesting race to keep an eye out for the general election. We do know, obviously, they're both registered Democrats, even though it is nonpartisan mayor. So we do know there will be another Democratic mayor of Los Angeles. But Bass or Raman is going to be a very fascinating race and one that should be very close. So now nearly a week, or literally a week from election night in California, now on Tuesday, June 9th, we officially have projections for the general election. Karen Bass and Nithya Raman will be going to the general for Los Angeles mayor. And in the governor's race, Xavier Becerra and Steve Hilton will officially be the general election candidates for that, with Tom Steyer falling about 200,000 votes short of Hilton in this race for governor, with about 84% of the vote in this race. That's where things stand in the California governor's race. I'm not sure if I'll do another update video or not when all the votes are in, now that the races are called. But for now, this is what could be the California election results essentially all wrapped up. But for now, that'll be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for also sticking with these videos I've done over the last few days over the updates on these races. I really appreciate you sticking around and watching these videos. I hope you enjoyed. Please hit like and subscribe if you did. I have a new video coming out every day at 3 p.m., so I hope you'll stay tuned for that. For now, that'll be it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in a future video.